In the name of God, most merciful, ever merciful, and may God's peace and blessings be upon His holy Prophet Muhammad and the purified members of his household and progeny. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifinaik. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Dear respected brothers, sisters, and viewers wherever you may be, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is reported in the book of Al-Kafi. The narration number is 740, chapter 61. This is the first hadith in that chapter. One of the companions of Imam al alayhi salam, Mu'adh ibn Kathir, reports that Imam al alayhi salam said, "A will came from the heavens to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi in a sealed written format. Nothing came to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi from the heavens in a written sealed document except this will. Jibreel alayhi salam said, O Muhammad, this is your will about your followers to leave with your family. The Messenger of Allah asked, which family of mine, O Jibreel? And Jibreel replied, the one selected by God for his nobility and his descendants, so that they inherit your knowledge, as Abraham left his knowledge as an inheritance. This legacy of Abraham is for Ali and your descendants from his lineage." The Imam continues by saying, the document had several seals on it. Ali opened the first seal and followed what he was instructed to do. Then Al-Hasan alayhi salam opened the second seal, and he followed the commandments and instructions given to him. When Al-Hasan passed away, then Al-Husayn alayhi salam opened the third seal and found therein instructions saying, fight and then you shall be killed, and rise with individuals towards martyrdom, a martyrdom that can only be theirs with you. Then Imam al Hasan alayhi salam, then Imam al alayhi salam continues by saying, Al-Husayn alayhi salam followed the instructions entirely, and when he left this world, he delivered it to Ali ibn al-Husayn just before his martyrdom. Ali ibn al-Husayn opened the fourth seal and found in it instructions to remain silent and gaze down, because knowledge must be veiled. Just before his passing away, he delivered it to Muhammad ibn Ali, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. He opened the fifth seal and found therein instructions ordering him to interpret the book of Allah, the Most High, confirm the truthfulness of your father, Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, and leave it as your legacy for your son, and train the ummah. Stand up for the right, for the sake of Allah, the Most Holy, the Most High, and say the truth when in fear and in peace, and do not fear for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Most Holy and the Most High, and say the truth in fear and in peace, and do not be afraid of anyone except Allah. And he did as he was instructed and delivered it to the succeeding Imam. And Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam stopped talking. The narrator, Mu'adh ibn Kathir, says, so I said to the Imam, may Allah make me a ransom. Are you the succeeding Imam? And the Imam answered, there is nothing wrong in your answer, except if then you go, Mu'adh, and narrate to people that which will harm me. So Mu'adh said, I pray to Allah, who has granted you this rank and this position through your noble ancestors, that He grants you a successor with the same lofty rank before you leave this world. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam answered Mu'adh by saying, Allah has already done so, O Mu'adh. And so he asks, who is it? May I be your sacrifice? And the Imam replied by saying, this sleeping one, while his hand pointed to the one named Al-Abd al-Salih, the righteous servant, which was one of the nicknames of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. And thus ends this narration. When we began yesterday, we said that we were going to take a couple of nights, a couple of lectures to provide an overview of the tragedy of Karbala by providing a context to which we can refer the rest of the nights. So when we began yesterday, we concentrated more on the rank and the position and the status of Imam al Husayn alayhi salam in this world, and in the canvas, in the network, in the worldview of Islam. The position of Imam al Husayn and what he is supposed to represent for someone who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in this religion. Tonight we want to concentrate on the second aspect of what we called the overview of the tragedy of Karbala, and this is the actual chronology of the events, the timeline of the events that led to the tragedy that happened on the land of Karbala on the 10th of Muharram. The narration that we began with is the one that we mentioned yesterday, and we said we don't have time to cover it, and this is to provide a little bit more context and a little bit further illumination on the reasons that would lead someone like Imam al Hasan alayhi salam to deal with someone like Muawiyah by deciding at some point to have a peace treaty with him instead of continuing to fight. And we provided a few important points to mention to this. We will not repeat them. So keep this narration in mind. We will refer to it again and again over the next few nights. But this is a narration that gives us a new meaning to understanding the way that Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam dealt with the circumstances of their times in different ways. So we may understand it through the material causes, the normal causes of this world, and we may also understand it in this more of a supernatural and divine order of things. When they receive instructions from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we believe they do, being infallible divine imams, in the correct manner in which they are to proceed, in the correct manner in which they are to make their strategic positions and to make their decisions based on the circumstances of their time. We said that after the assassination of Imam al Hasan alayhi salam at the hands of Muawiyah, and while conspiring with his wife Ju'dah, he sent the poison to her and bribed her, and he cheated and lied on his bribery to her. She ended up poisoning Imam al Hasan alayhi salam, and he left this world after having put in place the peace treaty with the Imam, himself with Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. And this peace treaty would basically give the Imam the rank of a Khalifa without calling him a Khalifa, at least over his own people. It would have given him the political autonomy, the social and religious and financial autonomy to rule over his people, should Muawiyah actually respect the conditions that Imam al Hasan put in that peace treaty. When this happened, as we said, even the followers of Imam al Hasan misunderstood him, and they disrespected him, and many left him, and they said very insulting words that should never have been said to someone like Imam al Hasan alayhi salam, especially coming from people like them, many of them being the actual companions of the Holy Prophet and companions of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and they should have known better. But they misunderstood, and they went too far in their misunderstanding to the point where they doubted the decisions of the Imam, and not keeping in mind his infallibility and his divine rank, when the Holy Prophet said about him and his brother that they are imams, whether they rise or they sit, whether they make a peace treaty or whether they go to war, they remain imams. But the people misunderstood. And so this narration helps us understand this a little bit. When this happened, even in the time of Imam al Hasan alayhi salam, those companions came to Imam al Husayn, and they told him, your brother seems to be a man who is much more inclined to peace. So how about you lead the movement against Muawiyah? We because initially when they came to the Imam, he told them we need to respect his opinion. So they told him, okay, his opinion is for him. How about you lead us? He's perhaps a man who's more inclined to peace, but we know that you will not be. And the Imam answered them by saying that so long as he is my brother, he is the Imam, his opinion is the right opinion, and his decision is the one that we shall all respect. This was of the living of Imam al Hasan alayhi salam. When we fast forward till after the assassination, the martyrdom of Imam al Hasan, the people came again, and many more people came to Imam al Husayn alayhi salam. And they started telling him, now that Imam al Hasan alayhi salam has passed away, we are no longer bound by the conditions and the peace treaty that he put in place with Muawiyah. So how about you rise now? And in short, without going into the details, the answer of Imam al Husayn alayhi salam to them at that point was that we shall continue to respect the conditions and the peace treaty put in place by Imam al Hasan. And he told them, so long as this tyrant remains alive and in place, referring to Muawiyah, you shall all remain in your homes and you shall not touch your swords. And this was the position of Imam al Husayn alayhi salam, which is important to understand. Many of us only look at the life of Imam al Husayn as though it started and ended in the events of Karbala. Well, Imam al Husayn alayhi salam had a whole life before, and this is part of his life. He took the same position as Imam al Hasan alayhi salam during the life of Imam al Hasan, and for 10 years after Imam al Hasan alayhi salam, while he was an Imam, he maintained that same position. And so in that time, Muawiyah started going even further in his oppression and in his tyranny and in his injustice. He started killing very important personalities and very important companions of the Holy Prophet, of Imam Ali alayhi salam, whoever could be someone that speaks out against Muawiyah, whoever may aspire to one day be looked upon or admired or considered someone inspiring, Muawiyah was getting rid of them one after the other, including people like Al-Amr bin Al-Hamq al-Khuza'i, people like Hijra bin Uday or Adi. Those people were considered monks and worshippers. Those people were considered as representatives from the different tribes and the different followers of the Arabs that were able to garner the people and the support and bring them to Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And so Muawiyah got rid of those people one after the other during that time. And he continued to oppress the people. He would chase anyone who would be considered as a follower of Ahlul Bayt, a follower of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and he would persecute them, and he would make sure that they have difficulties in every aspect of life, socially, financially, and so on and so forth. And as this escalation starts, Imam al Husayn alayhi salam also starts escalating and openly defying Muawiyah. So about 5 years before the death of Muawiyah, it becomes very clear that he is preparing the grounds for his son Yazid to take over. Muawiyah has not yet started to force the people to pay allegiance to Yazid. But some people start understanding that this is the way things are going, and so some of the tribes and some of the governors of Muawiyah start coming to him and paying allegiance to him, that they accept his son Yazid as the one who is going to be the heir apparent. He's going to become the Khalifa as though he's a king dying, and his son, the prince, is going to become the one who succeeds him to the throne. As this happens, as we said, Imam al Husayn alayhi salam starts to be more open and more public in speaking out against Muawiyah. And as the oppression mounts, a lot more people are starting to talk about Bani Umayyah and about Muawiyah and everything going on at a social, financial, political level. About 2 years, this continues till about 2 years before the death of Muawiyah, when Imam al Husayn alayhi salam decides that it was time to make this opposition a lot more public. So he takes advantage of the season of the pilgrimage, where the who's who of the Islamic world is going to be in attendance. And Imam al Husayn alayhi salam chooses the days of Eid al-Adha, the height of the season of pilgrimage. And he chooses the area, the land of Mina, which is an open field. And it is said that he invited to that conference that he wanted to organize everyone who was considered influential, everyone who was a head of tribe, everyone who was considered respected politically or religiously, socially, all the great companions of the Holy Prophet, all the scholars of Islam were invited one by one to that conference, where more than 1,000 of them attended, in addition to all of Bani Hashim, in addition to the heads of tribes of Al-Ansar, Al-Aws and Al-Khazraj, and others. And in that conference where all these people attended, he wanted to make sure that he was going to make certain things very clear to everyone. He was going to, as they say, cross the T's and dot the I's. This was a large conference that lasted a few days, and during which the Imam spoke a number of times, the most important of which was the sermon that he gave, which has been known now as the sermon that was given at that conference, a long sermon. It really deserves to be read and studied. In there, he starts by telling the people that he wants them to document every word he is going to say. He literally tells them, write down every word. And make sure that when you go back to your people after the season of the pilgrimage in all the different lands of the Islamic world, when you go back to your people, make sure to report every word that I have said, and to discuss and to relate everything that I am going to say now. And then in this long sermon, he starts by praising and singing the merits and worth and values of Imam Ali alayhi salam, one after the other. He mentions the event of Ghadir, he mentions the event of the Mubahala, he talks about how the Holy Prophet closed all the doors to the mosque except the door of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and he asks them, did this not happen? Do you not know who Ali is? This is how it begins. And then Imam al Hasan alayhi salam, he reminds them that as the scholars and the influential people carrying the knowledge of Islam, that they have a very heavy responsibility and duty to speak up when they need to speak up, and to rise if ever they are called to rise. And he asks them, is this not true? And they agree. They say, yes, it is. And then he starts to list the crimes and the sins and the evil of Bani Umayyah and of Muawiyah. So as we said, the confrontation is becoming a lot more open and a lot more public. And then he tells them, if we ask you to support us and you do not end up supporting us, then people like Bani Umayyah, their oppression is only going to get worse, and the light of this religion of yours is going to be entirely and completely extinguished. Nothing will be left of this religion. The news of these activities, this was not the only one, but this is one of the main activities of Imam al Hasan alayhi salam, and there were many others, but this one was the big one. News of this starts reaching Muawiyah, so he writes letters to Imam al Hasan. He writes a first letter in which he tells him, I've been hearing that maybe there's something going on in your head that you want to do. I advise you, so the tone is a little bit toned down, let's say. Not too harsh yet. Extremely disrespectful to talk to Imam al Hasan in that manner, but the tone is not yet one of threats and warnings. Then he writes the second letter to Imam al Hasan alayhi salam, and this one is harsher in tone. And to this one, the Imam responds with as harsh of a tone as the one used by Muawiyah in his letter. And in this one, the Imam starts listing the crimes and the sins and the evil of Bani Umayyah and of Muawiyah himself. Their transgressions, the manner in which they have killed people, the manner in which they go against the Book of Allah, and so on and so forth. So this becomes now an open confrontation, but it's only happening at a certain level. It's at a political level, and it's happening at the level of the letters being written by the Imam, and then as the news spreads in the society. So what Muawiyah is doing in this time is he's starting to force everyone to pay their allegiance to Yazid. This is going to be creating a precedent in Islam. Nothing like this had happened before, where someone who was considered a Khalifa, regardless of how he got to the Khilafah, was now imposing his son for no reason at all than just being his son as the Khalifa to all. And this was problematic at so many levels. Yes, religiously it was very problematic, but beyond religiously, culturally, socially, politically, it was a very big problem. Because nothing in the personality of Yazid gave the impression that he was fit to be a leader in any shape or form. Not an Islamic leader, forget Islam, just a leader in general. And this started creating a very big problem internally, but Muawiyah was going to impose it. He did not care. So, as this is happening, Muawiyah knows that there are going to be pockets of resistance. So he leaves very clear instructions to his son. He tells him that you are going to force everyone to pay allegiance to you. And he writes to his governors to force everyone in their lands to pay allegiance to Yazid as the new Khalifa. This is in the time of Muawiyah as he is dying. And among those instructions are the ones that he leaves to Yazid, telling him specifically about Imam al Hasan. He mentions 4 people, but he mentions Imam al Hasan alayhi salam specifically, saying that as for Husayn, make sure that he is one of the first to pay his allegiance, and if he refuses, you kill him. So we fast forward, and in year 60, midway in the month of Rajab, Muawiyah dies, having left these instructions. The news of his death reaches Al-Madinah al-Munawwara, he's in Damascus. The news reaches about 2 weeks, beginning of the month of Sha'ban. It reaches Al-Madinah al-Munawwara. Yazid has written a letter to their governor in Al-Madinah al-Munawwara, Al-Walid ibn Utbah, his cousin, and he tells him the news reaches in the middle of the night. And he writes to him, as soon as you get this, make sure that you have everyone swear allegiance to me, starting with Al-Husayn ibn Ali. And if he refuses, you kill him. Al-Walid ibn Utbah right away calls Imam al Hasan alayhi salam, summons him in the middle of the night to go to the palace of the governor. Imam al Hasan alayhi salam takes the members of his family, people like Al-Abbas and others. He takes a group of the men with him and he goes to the palace of the governor, and they want to enter, all of them with him. He tells them, no, stay outside. If you hear my voice raised, then break in. Otherwise, remain outside and let me see what they want. When he comes in, the governor, Al-Walid, shows him the book and tells him, this is your duty now. You have to pay allegiance to Yazid ibn Muawiyah as the Khalifa. Imam al Hasan alayhi salam tells him, someone like me cannot be expected to give his allegiance in the middle of the night in private where there is absolutely no one. And don't forget, Imam Husayn alayhi salam, in addition to his religious position, this is still someone who is the son of the Khalifa, Imam Ali alayhi salam. He carries a lot of social weight, cultural weight, tribal weight. He is the head of Bani Hashim at that time, in addition to all the religious charisma and aura that he has. So Al-Walid tells him, yes, that is true. Someone like you should not be giving his allegiance, in the middle of the night and without having anyone there as witnesses. So how about we wait until the morning and we see what happens? Marwan is sitting there. He does not want to let the opportunity pass, and we're not going to go into the political reasons why. There was a sort of a dispute behind the scenes. He wants to make this into a bigger thing than it is. So he tells Al-Walid, he tells him, you cannot let Al-Husayn leave you right now. Put a rope around him right now and force him to pay his allegiance to Yazid or cut his head. Imam al Hasan alayhi salam answers Marwan. And then he delivers a part of his speech there. He says, we are the house of prophethood. We are the source of the message of Allah. It is with us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has begun. And it is with us that He will end. And someone like me is never going to pay his allegiance to someone like him, referring to Yazid. And Imam al-Husayn left. Bani Hashim had heard that the voice of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam was now louder, and they were preparing to get in. Imam al-Husayn leaves and tells them, there's no need, let us leave. This became the spark. Yazid becoming the Khalifa became the spark. It fully exposed Bani Umayyah now, that all the conditions of the peace treaty, and this was the biggest one and the last one, that if Muawiyah is going to die, the Khilafah goes to Imam al Hasan. And if Imam al Hasan, as he wrote it in the conditions, if I am not alive, as though Imam al Hasan knew that he would not be alive, then it would go to my brother Imam al Husayn. So this is going to be fully exposing the intentions and the manner of work of Bani Umayyah. And this is what Imam al Husayn alayhi salam was now using as the spark for his movement. Because perhaps if he had moved before, people would have said that he was the one who broke the conditions. He is the one who broke away with the peace treaty. And people will not look at Imam Husayn alayhi salam as a religious leader, especially the people of Sham, who do not even know, as we are told in some narrations, they did not even know that the Holy Prophet has any relatives apart from Bani Umayyah. That's the extent to which the propaganda of Bani Umayyah worked in the people of Sham, completely ignorant of what the religion is and what are its teachings. But with Yazid becoming the Khalifa, Imam Hussein could now expose Bani Umayyah, and he starts moving, and this can be considered as one of the first public and open confrontations that is going to spread very quickly. Imam Hussein alayhi salam does not waste any time. That same night, he starts bidding farewell to important members of Bani Hashim, to important people in Al-Madinah Al-Munawwara. He leaves his important belongings with Salama, one of the last people that he bids farewell to. He visits the grave of the Holy Prophet, and either that night or the night after, he leaves the city of Medina towards the city of Mecca, which is considered to be another stronghold in the Islamic world. So, from a political, from a strategic point of view, it's a very smart move of Imam al Husayn alayhi salam to head to Mecca, the other holy city in the Islamic world. And he remains there for about 4 months. During that time, the news is starting to spread. Imam Hussein alayhi salam refused to pay allegiance to Yazid. He left the city of Medina, and now he is in Mecca. And so a lot of the people start coming to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, including people who heard about this in Basra and Kufa. And they start writing to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And the people in Basra and Kufa write to him telling him, how about you rush to us? We are told that the people, especially in Kufa, they sat together. They never liked Bani Umayyah. They were never really loyal to them. So they sat together and they said, now that Muawiyah has died and Yazid has become Khalifa, we don't want Yazid to rule. Imam al-Hussein is there. How about we seize that opportunity? Let's write to him and prepare the ground for him so that he comes as our Khalifa to rule over us in Kufa. So they wrote to him thousands of letters representing tens of thousands of people in the southern part of Iraq and Basra and Al-Kufa, coming to Imam al-Hussein through different messengers, bags and bags full of letters, telling the Imam that we are ready for you, come to us whenever you can. In the meantime, the other people who are hearing about the movement of Imam al-Hussein in Mecca, some of the companions, some of Bani Hashim, they start coming to the Imam and they say, we're not sure what you plan to do, but whatever you do, do not go to Iraq. Those people are going to betray you. Some of them told him, how about you just pay allegiance to Yazid and not expose yourself to this kind of situation where it's going to be an open confrontation and bloodshed with Yazid and Bani Umayyah. Others told him, if you are to travel, travel elsewhere. Go to Yemen, go somewhere else, but do not go to Iraq. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam sent his cousin and the man that he referred to as his brother and the most trustworthy of his household, Muslim ibn Aqil, as his representative from Mecca to Kufa to see what is going on and to see whether those people who are saying that they are with Imam al-Hussein and ready to receive him as the ruler, whether everything is as they said and whether he can actually go and rule. So while all of this is happening, the Imam also delivers a number of sermons, including the sermon that's also known as the Sermon of Mina. This time, he says openly in it, and he tells many of his people that are coming to see him that the Imam is not really looking for a political rule. He says, oh Allah, you know that whatever we have done, we have not done it because we are running after some sort of kingdom or some worthless coal, which he's referring to the material things of this life. If we did anything we did, it is to create a social reform and to bring back the teachings of your religion and the light of your prophet into this ummah. So Imam al Hasan alayhi salam is already starting to give signs that he is not necessarily only moving to establish a political rule or for social reasons. There is a combination of all of those, but there's a religious motive that perhaps goes even beyond this world. In other words, the Imam is even contemplating death for his movement, and a lot of people are starting to understand this. This is all happening in the city of Mecca. So, as all of this is happening, Imam al Hasan alayhi salam begins the season of pilgrimage, which is only a few days long. But the Imam does not end and complete his pilgrimage. He leaves about 2 to 3 days before he can complete all the actions, the rituals of the pilgrimage. And we need to ask why. Why would the Imam not complete the ritual of the pilgrimage, considered one of the most important in the Islamic world? And there are many reasons. One of them is that Muslim ibn Aqil had now written back to the Imam telling him that things were good. We're going to talk about that in a second. So rush to me. Things are good. And if the people had written in that manner to the Imam, then the Imam did not want to leave any excuse. When the people come to an Imam and tell him, come and rule over us, the Imam is not going to say no. That's what was missing in the Khilafah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And he only accepted when the people came to him and asked him to become the ruler. Well, the same thing with Imam Husayn alayhi salam. When you receive thousands upon thousands of letters saying that we are ready to receive you as a Khalifa, the Imam did not want to leave that as an excuse, and he told them, if it is true like you said, then I will come to you. And the Imam did not want to become a reason for bloodshed in Mecca. He knows that Bani Umayyah do not care about anything holy or sanctified or sacred in Islam. But he doesn't want to be the one that causes that Bani Umayyah attack the Kaaba and attack the holy city of Mecca, which used to be considered a peace sanctuary even before Islam. And then the final reason is perhaps for us to ponder, which is the Imam is sending a message that there are perhaps things that are even more important than the external rituals that you look at. There are things that will become even more important than something like Al-Hajj and the rituals of Al-Hajj. Something like your Imam asking you to join him. That may be even more important than the Hajj that you are performing. And from a strategic point of view, people should wonder, how come someone, a worshipper and a righteous and a believer and a scholar of religion such as Imam al Hasan, how come someone like him does not complete his pilgrimage? This should make people wonder. This is something out of the ordinary. And this alone is enough to create attention to the movement of Imam al Hasan. In Kufa, Muslim ibn Aqil reaches. He goes right away to the house of the governor. He lives there for a little while because he's working with people like Al-Mukhtar, who's the son-in-law of Nu'man ibn Bashir, the governor in Al-Kufa. So he has ties, and he is received and respected and honored. This is Muslim ibn Aqil. He is the representative of Bani Hashim and the representative of Imam al Hasan alayhi salam. A lot of people join him, a lot of people work with him, and a lot of the commanders, a lot of the chiefs, a lot of the influential people of Kufa come and they start working with Muslim ibn Aqil to make sure that they have the support. And in a couple of days, Muslim ibn Aqil is able to secure over 20,000 allegiances that people are swearing to Imam al Hasan alayhi salam. So he wrote to the Imam, telling the Imam, 20,000 people have paid allegiance to you, rush to me, things are good. This is the book that Imam al Hasan alayhi salam received in Mecca, and based on which he left the city of Mecca. In the meantime, when those who were sympathizers with Bani Umayyah noticed what was happening in Kufa, they wrote to Yazid. They told him that if you don't want to lose control over your city, if you don't want to completely give up your city to Imam al Hasan, then you better change your governor. He's too soft. Nu'man ibn Bashir is someone who's too soft. He was known to be just and fair. Nu'man ibn Bashir was hands off. He let the people live, he did not oppress people, and he let that activity happen. And so they wrote to Yazid telling him, you need to do something quickly. So Yazid, what he does is that he writes quickly. I'm not going to go into the details now. He writes quickly to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, as much as he hated to do so, because he hated Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. But he wrote to him because he knew, as his father and as the advisor of his father told him, he is the most ruthless man that they knew and the most ruthless governor that they knew. He was the governor over Basra. He told him, you are now governor over Kufa, go and deal with this situation. So right away he comes to Kufa. He pays some people, he bribes people to see who's doing what. He realizes how Muslim ibn Aqil is working. Muslim ibn Aqil also feels what's going on, and so he starts going into hiding, along with the people with him. Ubaydullah does not waste time. He removes the Nu'man, goes into the palace, and starts torturing people, and killing people, and imprisoning people, and threatening the heads of tribes, and saying that anyone who is doing any movement that is going to be in support of Imam Husayn alayhi salam or Muslim ibn Aqil, he is going to be killed, their family is going to be persecuted, and so on and so forth. And that's what started happening in the city of Kufa. And then he captured the most important, influential people. People like Maytham al-Tammar, people like al-Mukhtar, people like Hani ibn Urwa and Muslim ibn Aqil. Muslim ibn Aqil and Hani ibn Urwa were executed. They were tortured and they were executed as fast as he could. Al-Mukhtar was imprisoned. Maytham al-Tammar was initially imprisoned, and I'm not going to go into his story. 10 days before Imam Husayn reaches Karbala, he was executed. Exactly like Imam Ali alayhi salam had told him. So they got rid of the influential people, the people who can do anything and garner the people. And then he started imposing that anyone who was capable of carrying a sword, anyone who had hit their puberty, had to be part of the army that was going to go and fight Imam al Hasan alayhi salam, leaving from Kufa. That's when a lot of the people who could run away started running away. No one wanted to have the blood of Imam al Hasan on their hands. But the threats of Ibn Ziyad were too much, and people were afraid. People did not know what to do. So those who are the true Shia, those were either killed, massacred, imprisoned, tortured, and so on and so forth. The ordinary people, they did not want to have the blood of Imam Hussein on their hands, but they felt that they were forced to. So he prepared an army of about 22,000 people that was supposed to depart from Kufa to go confront Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But if you read the narrations, you see that only about 10,000 of them reached Karbala, telling us that about 12,000 people had actually run away. They did not want to be part of this army. In any case, the first group that he sends is the group of Al-Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. He is actually heading 4,000 professional fighters to go and intercept Imam Hussein alayhi salam, to not let him reach Kufa. So there's a back and forth. Imam Hussein alayhi salam finally tells him, what's going on? What are you doing to me? Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi tells him that you cannot go into Kufa. Imam Hussein tells him, if I go to Kufa, it is only because the people of Kufa have written to me. They've asked me to come. I'm not coming out of my own accord. I'm not doing this to create some sort of movement by myself. And Al-Hurr does not seem to believe Imam Hussein, so he calls him and he starts showing him the written letters, the bags upon bags of writings coming to Kufa asking the Imam to come to them. So when Al-Hurr sees this, he starts thinking that there's another version to the story, which tells us a lot. Al-Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi is someone who is a top commander in the army of Bani Umayyah, and he still does not know what's going on behind the scenes. So he makes a pact with Imam Hussein. He tells him, I'm not going to do anything to you, and you do not do anything to me. But he prevents him from going towards Kufa. And he tells him, you cannot go back to Hijaz. And he stays between the caravan of Imam Hussein and the water. So the Imam continues to move towards eventually what is Karbala. Imam Hussein alayhi salam finally reaches Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram. The groups of people who were with Imam al-Hussein, it's not sure how many people left with Imam al-Hussein from Mecca. They were at least in the hundreds, potentially in the thousands. When the news reached Imam al Hasan that Hani ibn Urwa and Muslim ibn Aqil had been killed near Karbala, he delivered a sermon in which he told them the people of Kufa have now betrayed us. And the majority of the people around Imam al Hasan left. So the people who reached with Imam, when he reached the land of Karbala, it's difficult to say exactly how many they were. The most they were probably around 600. And the least is perhaps around 70. The reason why we always hear the number 70, 72, 74 is because Shaykh al-Mufid writes that there are 72 heads that were cut off and carried on the spears. So that became the symbolic number. But if you go back in history, some say that there were actually 70 men, but some say they were more 130, others say they were closer to 600. We do have, however, a narration from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam in which he says Imam al Hasan alayhi salam had 45 horsemen with him and 100 men, which means that they were 145 men in addition to the children and the women. They reached the land of Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram. Without going into the details, on the 3rd of Muharram is when the beginning of the armies that were sent from Kufa and eventually from Sham started appearing. No one, as we said, wanted to really participate and fight against Imam al Hasan alayhi salam, including people like Umar ibn Sa'd. Umar ibn Sa'd had been promised to become governor in Khurasan. As he was getting ready to leave, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad wrote to him and called him and told him, before you go to Ray, before you go to Khurasan, go lead the army and deal with Imam al Hasan in Karbala, and when you're done, you can go to Ray. And if you refuse, forget about Ray. So he went back and forth. Do I do this or not? Do I want to be governor over Ray so much that I'm willing to go and fight Imam al Hasan or not? And at the end, he decided that Ray was more important. So he went. And when he got to Karbala on the 3rd of Muharram, the first thing that he started doing was to negotiate with Imam al Hasan alayhi salam. He sent people to negotiate with the Imam, and the Imam sent people to negotiate with him. And the Imam gave them really good options. He told them, the people of Kufa have written to me. If they no longer want me as a ruler, then so be it. I will not become the ruler. I'm not here to impose myself on anyone. Allow me to go back to Mecca. They did not let him. Allow me to go back where I came from Hijaz. They did not let him. He said, allow me to go anywhere else in God's land. They said no. Initially, when he went back and forth with Umar ibn Sa'd, Umar ibn Sa'd was happy with the solutions that Imam al Hasan was giving them. He doesn't want to become a Khalifa, and he's ready to go anywhere else. And he writes to Ubaydullah, and Ubaydullah also agrees from Kufa. He says, okay, we don't want the blood of Imam al Hasan on our hand. He's saying, I'm going to leave somewhere else. I'm not going to go back, and I'm not coming to Kufa. But Shimr ibn al-Jawshan was with Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad in Kufa. And he started calling them cowards and telling them, is this what you're going to do? So Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad wrote to Umar ibn Sa'd. And he told them, did I send you there to give more days to live to Husayn? End this. Either you bring him to me, having accepted allegiance to Yazid, or you kill them and mutilate their bodies, because that's what they deserve. And the fighting happens. And Imam al Hasan alayhi salam, multiple times, every chance he had, he was trying to avoid the bloodshed. And we know the details, I will skip over them, we're out of time. Until at the end of the battle, when the Imam was left all alone, the Imam went back to these options. He told them, allow me, do to me what the Holy Prophet would do with the mushrikeen. And they told them, what does he do with the mushrikeen? He told them, if a mushrik gives up and decides not to fight, the Holy Prophet does not fight them. The Holy Prophet only fights people fighting him. If they are a real threat. If they are not a threat, the Holy Prophet lets them go. And their short answer was no. And this further exposes again and again, like all the actions and like all the words of Imam al Hasan alayhi salam on that day, it further exposes what they were doing. It further exposes that what they were saying no to and what they were killing were the commandments of Allah, was the book of Allah, were the teachings and the person, the figure of the Holy Prophet. When he's telling them this is what the Holy Prophet would do, and they said, we don't accept that, we will kill you. And that's why we are told that their hearts had become hard. As the Quran says, they become deaf and dumb, they cannot hear, they cannot see. The narrators of the Maqtal tell us it's as though Allah removed the mercy from their souls on that day. And so as Imam al Hasan alayhi salam was dying in his last moments, Zainab alayhi salam came out and she was seeing what was happening. She would cry out to the army of Umar bin Sa'd. She would say, is there not a single Muslim man among you? And no one would reply. Because no one can really say that there was a single Muslim man among them. Then she turned to Ibn Sa'd and she told him, Umar ibn Sa'd, are you really going to stand there watching as they kill Abu Abdullah? And the narrators tell us that all he could do, he could not answer Sayyidah Zainab. All he could do was to turn his head away from her and away from where Imam al Hasan alayhi salam was being killed, and he cried out to the men in his army, telling them, what are you waiting for? Stop torturing the man and end it. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifina'ik. Assalamu ala al-Husayn wa ala Ali ibn al-Husayn wa ala awlad al-Husayn wa ala ashab al-Husayn wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.